You just got? Did you really? Did you like? Are you a
went down.
basketball geek?
Well, Gary and I go to all the games, right?
Is that right?
I mean, you have to choose. So we go to the men's games. A few years ago, we went to the women's games. You know, you sort of spread it around. But we wanted to see the guys do well down in Boise. So we watched the game. We were cheering like crazy, and it mattered, you know, because there aren't that many people. So you're
Sure.
at the top of your lungs, and they can tell that they're being supported.
That's someone there that cares.
Yeah, and they won, you know, against Idaho State.
Yeah, the first one out.
The first one, and it was like a fight to the finish because nobody wants to be the loser. Everybody wants to be the winner.
I think we're live. This is Music in Missoula. I'm Gary Gillett, and it's so nice that you tuned in to check out what this little episode might be about and what's happening. And I think we've got this sucker on record. And we've got it confirmed, and everything should just be fine. Hey, our guest today is Stephen Hesla, and Stephen and I are we know each other vaguely from being musicians in a small town. And we've done a few things together, but not many. You know, he's on a different level than I am. And what we do have in common that we're musicians and we're still making music. We're just doing it more part-time now in our retirement. One of the cool things about that I found about the occupation of my is also my hobby, is that we make music, and we just are lucky enough to find an avenue to be able to get paid for it and make an almost living. But in fact, that our vocation is also an avocation, and that even though I no longer get a check from Missoula County Public Schools, that I'm still making music and get smaller checks from different places now. But you know, the fellows I taught with that taught math or science, you know, and their careers came to a screeching halt for the most part. And then they're trying to figure out what they're going to do in their lives. And that as musicians, that I didn't retire from making music. Now I don't teach as much. I have to admit that one, but I still make music. You find yourself in the same thing, Bud?
Absolutely, yeah. Friends through the years have said I never worked a day in my life because teaching music is like we call playing the piano, not working the piano. It's kind of like that.
Yes, and to keep that mindset of, I'm not going to work, I'm going to school, and then for the most part, I'm playing and sharing. I found myself over the years keeping away from the work word on purpose, just to help me help me deal with the fact I spent so much time at school. But for the most part, it was making music.
Well, you're doing the summer band, and all of that's great. You're contributing to the community,
and still a reason to get up in the morning and to continue with our craft. Much of what I do is crafty instead of artsy. I know that because the art aspect of it takes so much more diligence I know that personally. But crafting, I can craft a concert, I have to, in an hour and a half and put together an hour concert. That's I see it more crafting than
I don't know. That's a skill unto itself.
I give it maybe so. It's a skill. It's just not very artful, but that's all right. We get enough out of it, and it's plenty for audience. That they can. That way, there's something for us to share with folks that want to share in it, and it's the art of that sharing.
Making music. Yeah.
Making music. There it is. Hey, tell us about yourself,
sure.
buddy. In case these folks don't know, even you as little as I do.
Well, I had my 43 years at the University of Montana, ended during COVID in May of 2021.
Was it anticlimactic for you because of that? I didn't get invited.
I know.
Okay.
Well,
right. I didn't invite you to.
You
to play
were
my
the
band.
next one on the list.
It's just so strange during the COVID time that when I came back with the band that I could only put 36 bodies on stage.
Exactly.
And yeah, that was really a strange one, and I had to go out and limit the seating of people in the park. So I had to get there early and had an old football chalk machine and chalk out area just to keep us all from each other.
Well, it was very different, but we somehow weathered it, got through it, and life has returned more to normal for lots of good reasons.
Now I feel, and do we feel better off because of it? I'm more grateful now
Maybe.
for having the opportunity to make music within an ensemble without all the restrictions that we were jammed into.
Well, I appreciate the chance to work with people directly versus on the internet or Zoom, but I became good, I think, at teaching, and the students became adept at being students through Zoom. I set up my studio at the university from, let's say, March of 2020 all the way through spring of 2021, pretty much. I don't remember the exact dates of any of that, but it was a year and then some where we're doing Zoom lessons. And it was a challenge, but at first I was trying to they were in their apartment with their little digital keyboards, and I was somewhere, and we got all kind of different qualities. So it finally occurred to me I could set up my studio at the university so it was their space, and I was at home with my space. And all 17 lessons each week or whatever it was would come to the studio, and so the setups were identical for them. And so all they had to do was flip this certain switch, and we went, and the sound was great. And I got to something called the musician's settings within Zoom. I learned them through different colleagues, and I got to where I could hear the pedal thumping or the keys sort of slapping back down on inside the action, and you could hear a lot. And so I could really teach to the sound and to the person. It wasn't like cutting in and out.
Okay.
So that was the solution.
And playing on a fine instrument instead of whatever
they were on
had.
a great piano, and I have a wonderful piano at home, and they could hear me clearly, and our time lag was, a little bit, you couldn't play together ever because of that. So, but I could always demonstrate, and they could always respond, and they could make their performance and improve. So I think we all honored that it's better to do it the best way we can than to complain.
Right.
And we all got through it.
And cry about it and moan about it and just taking a bad situation and doing the best with it what we could. Right.
And then so we gradually got to have commencement through Zoom. And so a few weeks later we all commenced. We all graduated at the same time. I graduated to retirement. And 43 years at UM wasn't the only teaching. I had 6 in Michigan, and I had 2 as a grad assistant, and I taught since I was 12 on the farm in South Dakota. I think I'm from that little town.
It sounds like a movie.
Yeah, Wakanda, South Dakota. And I just came across that I was looking up an obituary, in fact, of a relative, and it says they were born in Wakanda, South Dakota, and had their life in Dallas, and it's now gone. Kind of a first cousin of my dad. So it's in that generation where most of that generation is not living now, but they were born in Wakanda. Rural, that's so hard to say, rural Wakanda.
and then,
Even if you're a farm boy, it's hard to say rural.
rural. And
I know, rural.
you have to say it on purpose.
I know.
It just doesn't come rolling
I know,
off.
it's a tough word. Anyway, so farm boy. So, yeah, a lot of years. And I really loved it always. And so I don't mind now that I get up in the morning and I'm not teaching 7 piano lessons. That's okay, because I always had summers. So that kind of was a prelude to retirement.
We practiced retirement during the summers.
I think we practiced how to, like I've had a thought, who else am I? Not just, am I only a piano teacher or a pianist or a musician? We're all lots of things.
And what are you?
Well, I love woodworking, and I'm kind of working toward that again. And
that's not at all unusual. I have all kinds of retired band teacher friends that, Fred Nelson. That's what he did. Narum. It's more common than not for that woodworking and that of using these skills of refining and small work. And I'm exactly the opposite. Is that I'm a rough carpenter. I learned that early in my life. I'm not a fine carpenter at all. My band sounded that way as well. Yeah, I deal in larger landscapes and not so much in the finesse, as you can tell from my outfit.
I like your outfit. I love it.
But that many fine musicians come to woodworking, and that the manipulating of the source, and then the time and energy and detail.
Well, I learned how to, for example, repair pianos, but it was because our old junker piano on the farm was always in disrepair. So I had to glue hammers, like Tinker Toy, kind of fixing things and get things working always. And then gradually I raised enough pigs to buy my own piano when I was a sophomore in high school or about that time. And, we were a farm family, so 5 children. I was the middle of 5, and so my parents were very fair-minded. They weren't going to buy me a new piano because I was the only one that was doing piano. Yeah. So if they did that, then they'd have to do the equivalent for each kid. So they said, if you want to save your pig money, we called it the pig money, you can go buy a piano. My mom accompanied me to the store. Dad was busy farming.
And what, in where? Vermilion?
Sioux Falls, big town. It is, it's huge.
Yes.
Now. But it was already the big city of South Dakota, and found a piano that I liked. And that was about the time that my teacher, we should back up a little bit. My first teacher was great. I was 5 when I started lessons. I actually brought this little picture I have showed you before, but this was, I was either 5 or 6. I can't be sure because nobody asked me how old I was. But it's my father's cousin in Iowa. I know the room, and I know the wallpaper, and I know the farm curtains. They were in a farm family. And they had this old piano, and I didn't care what it was, old or new. I would find my way. And even though the chair is, I'm only 5 or 6, and I'm sitting in a chair, so I'm having to reach like it's up to the top of Mount Sentinel to get to the keyboard. But I started playing by ear when I was 2.5. My mom told me. I don't remember it. So I don't remember not playing the piano, ever. I just don't remember when it started. But then I could play all the Christmas carols and whatever by the time.
Right, and folk tunes maybe?
Maybe, but we had a record player on the farm. And we weren't a folk tune family because it wasn't like you were farming, right? So you just came home and you had supper and you did your homework, and for me, I practiced some piano, but I loved it always. And I guess Christmas carols, we were pretty much a rural Lutheran South Dakota church family, and all the cousins and the grandparents on both sides were 1 mile away and 3 miles away, and so it was very much a family unit. And then school band and school choir and grade school music, and I played for the operetta when I was in the 4th grade because I could. I was pretty advanced by then, and so music just kind of fit into my life. And my mother's sister was a fabulous ear playing and reading and church. She was the church organist. So we had a bond that was unique because it just sort of crossed into the next family. Not her children were musical, but not motivated in that same way.
Sure, not serious about it.
Yeah, and so I just kept wanting to do better, I guess.
And,
Anyway.
and the piano, so the Sioux Fall piano store.
Yeah, that inspired my next thing. So I was starting to tell you that in my freshman year of high school, pretty much 8th grade, my first teacher, that was the one I was working with and during the time of that picture or just after, she moved away to be her children. Children sometimes move their mothers and people closer to, in her case, La Crosse, Wisconsin, to care for 87-year-old piano teachers. And piano teachers never retire, they just fade away. Anyway, but she came back. She was there for a couple of years and she said, I don't care. If I fall, slip and fall, I'm going to go back to my little Vermilion, South Dakota. Wakanda was my school, but Vermilion was my music, because we were halfway between the two towns. And Vermilion was the University of South Dakota. And so when she moved away, within a few months, I got to study with the professor at the University of South Dakota when I was in the 8th grade. And I knew it was going to get serious then, because she was a fabulous teacher. And my first teacher was great too. She was like detailed. I mean, I thought she was deaf because I had a piece memorized within an hour that she assigned it to me, a Chopin prelude, and I thought, oh, this is beautiful, but it's only one page, and I memorized it in an hour, and I thought she's going to be so impressed, and I went to that next lesson, and she started, let's try this, and I thought she was deaf because she kept saying, I can't hear the melody, and I thought, what's wrong with you? I hear it just fine. Well, then I learned about, bringing out the melody, voicing and balance and shading, and now we're going to do the left hand alone, and we're going to pedal, and it's going to be smooth. And 6 weeks later, I was still on that piece, and I knew this was serious.
and did you embrace that?
I did, partly because I loved it. I loved the challenge.
Okay.
I just ate
so
it
you
up.
bought. So you bought what she was doing.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I knew she was great, and I knew I wasn't.
Okay.
I knew it was my only chance was to pay attention, and so I also knew that I wasn't doing it for credit or paying tuition. So she could throw me out anytime.
Right.
Yeah.
If you were a bad student, she could do without you.
Yeah, exactly. And she only had one or two that weren't college, and so, but we quickly bonded. And anyway, about a year later, beginning of my freshman year in high school, or partway through it, she said, Stephen, there's a new competition, and it's really a big deal. And if you work hard, and if you win your state, then you get to go on. And so then all the state winners from 6 divisions. So our states were in the Midwest, what I call, or the Plains states, kind of coming right up on the Midwest. And there were 8 states, and so if I won South Dakota, it took me 3 years to win South Dakota. Just South Dakota, the farm boy state, the farm girls, and anyway. So I finally won it my senior year. And then I knew that 4 hours a day of practice that I was having to do to try to win the state wasn't paying off yet. So finally my senior year I won it. And then I had 5 months, I think, exactly to the day to get ready for the 8 states. And then I started thinking, I'm a farm boy from South Dakota. There are kids who have been practicing 5 hours a day since they were 5 in Minneapolis and Denver and St. Louis and Kansas City. And I thought of all the people that had privileges that I didn't.
Sure.
But I had a great teacher. So I said, okay, I'm going to practice 6 hours a day for the next 5 months. And it paid off, and I got to be one of the 6 national finalists. So that sealed the deal. And that's when her teaching and my compliance, let's call it, or my soaking up, or my just sheer determination. I think I was telling you once about a little self-decision I made in my senior year. I said, if it took me 3 years to win South Dakota, I don't know what else I can do except get real about how I'm sounding. So I ordered from Radio Shack a reel-to-reel tape recorder.
And was this your idea?
Yeah,
It wasn't her idea? It
No.
wasn't something you...
I just thought I better listen because I heard a lot of music, on the radio or recordings or whatever, and I knew how it's made me feel when I heard it play beautifully. So I thought, well, I'm playing beautifully. And so I heard this tape recorder, and you learn how to thread the reels, and it's kind of wobbly because it's $99 from Radio Shack.
Sure.
Anyway, and it was great. And so I recorded, and I'd record like the first page of each piece.
Okay.
And then I'd listen back, and I'd say, man, I would go to sleep if I were in the audience. And so then...
So self-critical.
Yeah.
And using it as a
tool
to motivate yourself, because many of us hear ourselves play and go, oh, Lord.
Well, we thought it would be a good idea to have someone's very first piano lesson here tonight in this room. It won't be long, and it won't be painful, but I think it's going to be really fun. We do have the esteemed President Seth Bodner in attendance, and somehow this was hatched by my wonderful colleague of 43 years. I didn't teach with him for 43 years. He taught at the university for 43 years. So he's got some experience. He hatched this idea at a ladies' basketball game, courtside. And so here we go. We've heard tongue clicking, we've had foot stamping and hand clapping. I can only imagine what this is going to involve. President Bodner, you're a good sport. Come on up.
So this is the moment Seth has been waiting for, or dreading. I told him he only has to use 2 notes to play this piece. Is this your first piano lesson?
This is my first lesson, and I have asked Stephen. I said, I really want to take up the piano, and he said, well, I can give you a lesson, and I just didn't know it would be in front of a lot of people in a very embarrassing moment, but that's all right.
He's going to do great, but before we start, you're going to help him a little bit. You're all going to teach a little bit here. So all you have to say, and all he has to know, is that D's in the middle of the 2 black keys. Can you say that with me? You too. D's in the middle of the 2 black keys. And he even jazzed it up a little bit. So cool. So we're going to do it, and he's going to learn it, and you're going to applaud him greatly because you always applaud the student. This piece is called the Tick-Tock Clock. I'm going to play a few extra notes for him to help him along. Teachers do this, but first he's going to rehearse. I told him I couldn't tell him what the 2 notes would be, or he would practice. He would practice at home, and so I wanted this to be a true first lesson. No, I think it was just that it was an accomplishment, but it's one thing for everybody to tell you. My teacher at Oberlin, I eventually went to the conservatory after that, winning national title, not title, but place. I was one of the named, what would you call it, winner, second place. I tied for 3rd place nationally. And anyway, so I got to go to Oberlin, the conservatory, and I just still can hear my teacher there saying, Stephen, talent is cheap. It's the hard work that distinguishes those who go on.
And that's still very much a mindset, but that's really a Midwestern, in my mind, it's a Midwestern thing.
You have your Detroit, and Ann Arbor, and
and all that about the hard work. And I still,
work ethic. You mean?
The work ethic, and I know my own family was that way. They were farm folks as well, but I hear it all the time and on newscasts, local kids, and hey, this is tournament time right now for basketball.
Oh yeah, sure.
You just got? Did you really? Did
we-
you like? Are
we
you a
went down-
basketball geek?
Well, Gary and I go to the all the games, right?
Is that right?
I mean, you have to choose. So we go to the men's games, and was a few years ago we went to the women's games. You sort of spread it around, but we wanted to see the guys do well down in Boise. So we watched the game. We were cheering like crazy, and it mattered, because there aren't that many people. So you're
Sure.
at the top of your lungs, and they can tell that they're being supported.
That's someone there that cares.
Yeah, and they won, against Idaho State.
Yeah, the first one out.
The first one, and it was like a fight to the finish because nobody wants to be the loser. Everybody wants to be the winner. And I think the fact that this a digression here, but I think the fact that they had only 24 hours to play the next game, and the guys that beat them, namely Northern Arizona, had 2 days because they had played on Sunday.
So had longer rest time.
And
that's part of what tournament, that's tournament in strategies, right? That the team that comes in the number one seed has advantages of more rest.
Yeah.
And then it becomes an additional advantage.
It kind of pays off. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And these teams and the athletes, when they're interviewed, I notice, and so often, more than anything else, it comes down to kids going, all the hard work and all the time I put in paid off. Now,
well, I was so proud of them, and it's funny we're talking about that in a way because it seems off topic, but it isn't. Because it's the
so
same
similar.
thing. It's the talent is there, and then that hard work. I cannot believe how they're dribbling, and they do it in such a way that the defensive guys can't just reach in and get the ball because it's almost unpredictable. But I don't know. I'm just in awe.
Yeah, and we have this talent, and then we have the application of it. And I'm trying to think. Maybe I was an undergrad, and finally it was. No, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice may get you closer to it, but just practicing, putting the time in. It was. I found myself as an undergrad, working out technical things, and it didn't pay off, and it didn't pay off, and it didn't pay off, and then finally someone said, "Well, you got to practice better."
That's true.
It's not just practicing.
That's true. Not just putting in the time.
Putting in time it won't do it if indeed it's not directed by quality of some kind. It was a light flashing off for me. It's not just putting the time in. It's got to be.
I have a student who's in her 70s, so similar age, and she's a retired physician, but she is a determined pianist for her whole life, and that's part of her balance. And we were talking about how she came across a quote by Pablo Casals, who was I believe in his 90s, when he was still concertizing, but it may not have been that decade. I'm not remembering, but she said somebody asked him, "Why are you still putting in all this time practicing?" And he said, "Well, because somehow I keep improving." There's always room for improvement, and it's endless, it's infinite, and it's really the challenge and the joy in a way, because it's direct. If you discern that it could sound better, then you set about the process of making it better, and then you go to a deeper place. And through the years, I would tell my students, because I loved and continue to love helping others improve their skills, if that's a desire in their lives. And I said that you will become a teacher yourself, even though you think you may not. You will. Somebody's going to ask you, "How do you play the piano? Will you teach me?" Or whatever instrument. And you can only teach as deeply as you've gone. And so if you will, follow my nudging and encouragement, I think the joy of teaching was just finding where the student was, not where they aren't yet, but where they are, and then adding something to that is manageable, attainable.
So what else? Who else are you?
Who else am I? Oh, I think a lot of things. I'm cleaning parts of the house that I haven't seen in decades. And,
All right.
and
So you're a little type A probably, and
not enough actually, or there wouldn't be that mess. But it's okay. I mean, it's, I had to choose between like teaching, performing, and lots of volunteer things. Actually, we'll get to maybe a little bit of that, but I couldn't just teach and that was it. So I never took more than one student outside the university, so there'd be time to practice and play. And now in retirement, Gary, my partner, is like head of many garden clubs, and he was Montana's Gardener of the Year. So we are going to Dallas for the National Iris Convention, and people are trying to get him to become a national instructor. So that becomes part of my life, to just follow along or enable or assist or whatever. And so I'm partly a gardener. But of that talent that he has in discussions over the years, now there is a peony garden at the university on the campus that was his master dream, if you will. But many people in the community formed a committee, and now there is the only peony garden west of the Mississippi that is public and dedicated entirely to peonies, and there's 230 different peonies there. So that's something unexpected.
That's cool. And we're connected and have been for years because Gary, Stephen's partner, was my younger son's favorite teacher. Just when he was just old enough, I'm trying to remember what grade it was. Was it fourth grade? That's what comes to my mind. And my boy just bonded so incredibly. Gary.
Oh, nice.
And for years afterwards, they'd see each other at different places, and we'd keep in contact with each other. And it was one of those golden relationships with a teacher-student that we oftentimes we don't even know about until years afterward. But that's a real connection
I'll share
with
that.
us. Oh.
But you having studied at Ann Arbor, there's another set of words, at Ann Arbor, lots of A's. You would know maybe about the peony garden and on the campus there, maybe not.
I don't.
It's like the only other peony garden, like totally dedicated in the United States.
And is it on North Campus?
I don't know for sure. It's called the Nichols Arboretum, I believe, and there's a peony garden within that. It's huge, and it sort of fell into a little bit of, it depends on the people that are carrying, and the committees and the whatevers, and the funding, I'm sure. Because you don't get state funding for something like that, even though the university has provided the ground and they have committed to watering, providing the water. What are we going to do? Just wait for it to rain every day? So there's a lot of cooperation, but it's a fabulous thing. So who else I am is in some ways a volunteer, and now I am committed to helping MTNA, which is the Music Teachers National Association. Unlike now, the new name is
NAFME for
National
public
Association
school
for Music
teachers.
Educators.
That's it.
I looked it up.
They've changed their name, and it's just a generational thing. Right now, we all stumbled off of NAFME, but MTNA is a grouping of
a lot of piano, but other
not just piano,
not
right?
just
but
everything.
of not necessarily university-based folks, but a collection of private music
teachers, independent teachers.
Yeah.
Well, we're a good bunch in Montana, but MTNA was the thing that touched my life. And if I had only just practiced to get another blue ribbon or gold medal or superior rating locally, I think my playing would have just stayed at a certain status quo, even though I was motivated. That determination to become a national finalist set my sights. And so now I am a division director-elect so it's a 4-year job. Oh my gosh. And I'm not a person who runs for office. I run from office.
Okay.
But I'm willing to help. And so people reached out to me and said, you have a certain vision and you have a dedication to MTNA. And I say, well, that's because MTNA sort of guided my life.
Yeah.
Didn't become my life, but it guided opportunities, and it led to getting into the conservatory, which led to getting into graduate school, which led to getting a job teaching at Western Michigan University for 6 years before I came here. And all of that together was no question. I I was a 50-year member, I think this past November, a couple months ago, 50 years. So 1972 to 2022.
Yes.
Because I joined officially, I was competing, but that's as a student. You don't. In those days, you didn't join. They didn't have student chapters. Now they do. So we get students involved early, hopefully. But then I just joined as soon as I started teaching in Kalamazoo. You know the terrain very well.
Yes.
On Highway 94.
Over there.
I know,
Okay,
and
okay.
there's the thumb. And
I'm from over here by Detroit in Kalamazoo.
Anyway, so I joined, and just great friends and wonderful people and great musicians would come in and teach, and we'd all learn. And we'd learn because we're supporting each other and helping each other and applauding each other and promoting each other. And so it's a very positive thing. So I'm in charge in Reno coming up in March now. This is March, in 2 weeks. I'm in charge of a dinner for the one free evening that everybody has to do anything. But the Northwest Division is a very special, out of the 6 divisions. It's Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and Alaska. And we have people coming from all 6 states, and maybe just 100 people. But, you know, it's a dedicated bunch. And so of those 100 people, we now have 72 as of this morning coming to a dinner. Just for ourselves, and I had to organize that, and it's been fun. But usually you can only get if you're lucky, you can get where in Missoula would you find a room for 30 to have dinner? You could at Finn and Porter, that conference room.
Yeah.
Well, we found such a place in Reno, and they said, well, if you have 50 people, we'll put you in this room. But if you go to 53, we can only have 52 there, so we'll move you into this room. And so now we're in the maximum.
What a nice problem to have.
Well, it is, and everybody's been not able to go for it. This is the first time in 4 years.
Sure, of being able to finally come together.
Yeah.
How nice.
Yeah, so it's fun. So that's part of who else I am, because I want to help other people have their lives as musicians in the best ways they can, as teachers, as performers, as their students. We have 2 of our students that are coming, and they were like iffy about whether they could afford the price tag of because you have to pay the room charge and the 22%
Yeah, so dinner turns out being $100.
Kind of. I mean, getting up there, and so Chris Hahn and I talked about it, and Marjorie Watley, my 2 dear colleagues, still colleagues at the university, even if I'm the emeritus one, the retired one. And we agreed that those students shouldn't be denied just because they're poor. And we built this fund over the years through these Pianissimo and Celebrate piano concerts. And the kids all help, and so they built up a fund so they get a free dinner, so to speak.
Good.
And they'll get to go, and they'll be the youngest ones there by so much that everyone will be doting on them.
Oh, you sure? Look at the kids.
Look at the kids.
And that's good for
Makes
us
us
old
feel
folks.
young.
That's right, because we'll go back to when we were that.
I remember telling my piano class kids one time, I said, I know that I haven't aged because every year I look at your faces in front of me, 12 students at 12 pianos, and you always look the same. So I assume 35 years later I still look the same.
I still look the same
but
as well.
You feel the same because you're plugged in with kids, you know, who are just charting out their lives. And to be part of that.
And to be a part of it. That's the gift that we've had as teachers, is that you know, we've done the work, and we have the soul to put into it, and then people want what we have, and then we get to be a part of it.
And don't sell yourself short. You say, well, I didn't do exactly what you did. Well, I worked hard to do what I did, but what we're doing is the same, and oftentimes you taught at the high school level, and probably helped below that as well, grade school kids and everything. And that's the foundation. That's where you find the kids that are going to do it. You know,
and that when I went to that's right. And those are those things that come back, and I just still get a taste of them, like once a year or something like that. Just this shot out of the dark will be somebody that reaches out and makes that connection, and it means so much to me that I do it to people that I can surprise their life as well. There's something that they had said or done or helped with or whatever it is, and oftentimes we have no idea.
Well, and they say, Mr. Gillett, you know, it's because of you that I'm, you know, practicing my scales
Or that my kid now, I got somebody, a local gal here just in town, and asked me for advice about, hey, how do I what size of viola do I get for my kid? 'Cause and I taught strings for a while. I know how to size instruments, and it was just so nice is that she remembered me,
Yeah.
and that because it was quite some time
Recognizing.
ago. And I haven't.
But we haven't changed.
I haven't
so-
seen her in years, and now every time I drive by the family store, I think I ought to stop in there and find out she took over the family store. But that she thought enough about me to reach out and ask for help, and then
Oh, that's
I
great.
gave her, what she. And I said, hey, don't buy a sized instrument. I did that for my younger son. Before you know, he outgrew it. There I am trying to sell a quarter-sized cello. Rent or get one from the school until your kid is
Especially,
grown enough.
yeah.
Yes.
Renting can
So
be a
don't
good idea.
don't go out and buy a quarter-sized viola. Good not. But talk to your teacher. Go find that string teacher at your school, and they will help you.
This is something just pops into my head, but we were talking about how, let's say, MTNA affected my life because there came to be a competition. Prior to my high school years, there wasn't one, a national competition.
Okay.
So it was a great invention and a great teacher friend in Spokane that I came to love and admire and benefit from for years, who actually called me when she heard I was coming for an interview in Montana, and she said, if they offer you that job, you take it because I want you nearby.
Aww.
And we were friends forever, and she was great. But she was part of that committee that said, we need something for those kids, not that others aren't important because everyone will find their way, but for those kids that need that extra something, we should invent a state, then divisional, then national competition. What better thing? It was such a fabulous idea.
Yeah.
But not for everybody, but for the people that do it, then oftentimes they've become the people that then help the next generation. So now I had a student who wanted to compete. I've had several through the years that went on. Some of them became national finalists, or they benefited from going on to the divisional level. And one kid in particular, Adam Sears, a Missoula boy, and he had won divisional status to compete, but to get to nationals is that extra thing, and he worked hard, but we also did chamber music, and he ended up with a violinist and a cellist, and they formed a trio, and they worked up a really difficult program. And I just said, okay, and to myself I said, I don't care what it takes. If these kids are hungry to do it, I'm going to help them as much as my teacher helped me.
Sure.
She did not count the hours. She did not count all the extra lessons. I thought, why is she making me come in again to play that program till I'm almost bored to death? But it made a difference, and so I coached, and they listened, and I was telling the violinists and the cellist, because I'm not a violin and a cello teacher, I could help them musically and a little bit beyond that, but Margaret helped, and Fern at the time helped, and Adam Collins helped, and anyway, so I said to the string players, let's just say it that way, I said, no, this piece you have to sound like you're in Siberia and it's desolate and it's just, your haunting melody is just on that landscape and there's no time or energy or temperature for emotion because it's just got to sound hollow and just imploding and just sucking your audience in, and they will feel it if you do it. And I found out later they're thinking, faster, slower, louder, softer.
Give you the professional. Tell me how to play it.
I know. I know. Margaret did that, but they won third nationally, and they I'll tell you who they beat. They beat Eastman School of Music and Ann Arbor, Michigan, and the University of Missouri, Kansas City. So they came in third over those fabulous musicians who are taught beyond what we think we're doing.
Yeah.
But we can, and I could help them, and they took it, and they did it. And I said, when you go to nationals now, because I'd been there, right? So you can teach as kind of as deeply as you've gone. And so I said, when you get to nationals, I don't want you to sort of think, oh my gosh, we're at nationals. We really have to play well now.
Yeah.
I want it to be the next performance that you gave that was better than the last one. And that's what they did, and they were so cool that the judges sort of set their pencils down and just kind of this, then they'd write a little bit, but they weren't like just
Scratching
I'm
away,
here to scratch away.
making these. Hey, try
Help.
this, try this.
Yeah,
Try this.
exactly. They just got it,
And their lives,
the room went silent. You just felt it, and I was so proud.
and their lives have been changed forever.
The boy is now graduated from UM in cello. He was only 16 at the time. The joke was because it's for the solo competitions they can put an age limit, but when there's 3 or 5 or whatever musicians, you can't. So they had to kind of average out the age. So it had to average less than 26 years old, right? So I figured it out at the time. I said, well, I could compete in this if I got two-year-olds to play the cello and the violin with their quarter-size violins. But anyway, they worked so hard, and their lives are deeper. You're right.
Oh yeah.
I think when you go deeper, you carve out something within yourself. So it's not only the who else am I, it's how much deeper can I be.
Oh.
And it's a great thing. So I never felt like I wanted to retire. In fact, I would tell Chris and then later Marjorie, who's here now, my dear friends and colleagues, that I would be teaching away in the last several years, and I'd think to myself, I've never said it that well before, that you I'm sure experienced
Because we get better at it.
Exactly. It's the same process. You get better at teaching, you get better at playing, you get better at being better, I guess.
Yes.
Learning how to.
As long as we continue to work on our teaching craft about how do I set this up, and to read to kids about finding out where they are, and then what can we possibly do to help nudge them along.
It's a joy. So I never felt like I wanted to retire, and I didn't mind that I was going to, or that the university needed me to retire, in the sense that, as Missoula would know, they always need salaries to help other new positions or in times of difficulty, which I think all schools are having somewhat these days. How many people are really going to get a university teaching position in piano? Maybe not so many, maybe fewer and fewer.
Yeah.
I don't know, but if we're living our passion and we're living our joy of music and we're sharing it, and we're, now, as you mentioned, we have new ways of doing it, I guess I'm still evolving that way. It's like retirement is not the end. It's a new opening.
There was no wall coming down at our
not
retirement.
At all.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Hey, tell us about the piece that you're going to share with us, please.
Oh, well, Scott, our wonderful engineer here, recording guy, and I put together a recording of Claude Debussy, great French composer. In French, it's Reflet dans l'eau. Some pieces of music sort of have everything, lulls and climax, and this is one of those that just starts gently, and then it has some contours, and then it builds to a wonderful, unexpected harmony and arpeggios and roiling waters. If there were any reflections, it's no longer the placid, still waters. But there is one part that the hands are doing this, and it's so if you were a mountain, you see it reflected in the water, and Debussy wrote it into the
intentionally that way, you know, that he was.
And nobody would know it when listening, but when you see it on the score and then you think about it, you play it in a certain way because you feel reflective, kind of.
Okay, sure.
Anyway,
And
that's the piece, and it's from a suite that he wrote of 3 pieces in 1908, I believe. And image means images, so pictures, if you will, or scenes, if you will. So 3 different scenes, and this is the first one of the set of 3. And then he wrote later a second book. He called them books, livres in French, L-I-V-R-E, but the deuxième livre is a different set of 3 images, or pictures, or scenes, and I play both. I play all 6 of them, so this is the first one from the first book.
he wrote a piece called Moonlight?
Yeah.
Is it part of
Clair
that?
de Lune. No, that's...
Is that what it is?
It's that's part of a different suite, but you're on the right track because he would collect pieces that fit together and they would become a suite. I don't know, for purposes, I don't know if he set out to write 3 pieces that would be part of a suite or if he said this would make a nice...
Just last
Sweet.
evening, I finally watched 7 Years in Tibet.
Mm-hmm.
And I never watched it before because Brad Pitt, you know, like, yeah. Yeah. And the gift of the young Dalai Lama
Mm-hmm.
was this music box. And the kid was just enamored by it, so much so that the people had to take it away because he'd just spend time. And it was Debussy's Moonlight.
Oh.
When he would open it up. And then when the character, he was a mountain climber, Brad Pitt's character, when he finally knew he had to leave because the Chinese were coming in and taking over the Tibet, that he gifted, the Dalai Lama gifted this music box back to Brad Pitt, and then Brad Pitt brought it to his son, who had met.
I'll have to look for that.
And,
Is it Netflix or something?
yes. And here we go. Is Debussy? Is he one of your favorite?
The French is, for some reason, I really gravitate, and then Chopin, and I mean, I love Beethoven. Whatever people would say, who's your favorite composer? I say, well, it's the piece that I'm working on at the moment.
Sure.
I love whatever piece. I give my whole love to that, and it pays off and all of that. But you mentioned Clair de Lune, which is moonlight, or the light of the moon, right? Mm-hmm. Clair is the light, and Clair de Lune of the moon. And so that piece is in D flat major, and Debussy spans he retains the keys that we know about. So he goes into the 20th century till 1918, I believe, and so he's in the transition where people were starting to veer from tonality on purpose, and Schoenberg and all of that was coming up and happening, and so he keeps the D flat major, and it's so lovely and it's beautiful. It was 1890, so it fit in that late Romantic time, and this piece 1908, so a few years later, is also in D flat major, and so that's a very rich key, and I'm blessed with sort of having that perfect, almost perfect pitch, but maybe not quite. I would call it like occasionally perfect, semi-perfect pitch. I don't know if there is such a thing. But when I think of those pieces, I hear the key. Sure. And that key for pianists is sort of like, if you're a popular musician in the old days, Deep Purple was in D flat major, or some of the tunes that just tear people's hearts out are in D flat major. Chopin Nocturne in D flat major is just soulful, and that key is rich. And D major's bright and sunny, and C major's another thing, and there's things about people that are, I'm not one of them, who when they hear a key, a E flat major, they hear it in lavender, and they hear E major in yellow, and whatever.
Yeah, and there's a name for that phenomenon.
Synesthesia.
Yeah.
And
Oh, okay.
I don't have it, but
Neither do I.
yeah, but I think
Scott, do you? Do you have? Do you see colors?
All the time.
you really?
Ah,
all right. We know that you're there, though. I hope we can hear your voice on the recording. Well, it's so fun to talk with you about some of these things, and
well,
retirement is another adventure, I think.
it is.
Yeah.
So much fun. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Yeah.
Glad to get to know
A
you.
pleasure to visit with you, and thank you for your contributions.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed our little chat, got to know Stephen, and to share the music with you. Hey, it's fantastic music and great people. Thanks a lot. You know, when I get around to it, we'll do another one of these. The Scary Gillette. Music in Missoula.